All right. Next up, we all have childcare issues going on related to workforce. We have Jessica Thomasson, Executive Director of North Dakota Human Service Division. As the Executive Director, Jessica provides oversight and direction for a wide range of economic health and family well-being services and programs within the department. Jessica holds a bachelor's degree in political science and economics from the University of North Dakota and a master's degree from the University of Wisconsin-Madison in public policy analysis and urban regional planning with an emphasis on rural community development. Let's give a round of applause to Jessica.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Well, Katie couldn't have queued this topic up any better had we coordinated. So I think Minot in particular is one of the communities in the state that has really leaned in on the topic of childcare over the last couple of years. I had a chance to spend a little time with your mayor a few weeks ago at a National Early Childhood Leadership Summit along with Representative O'Brien and others to really think about how state and local partners can work together with the private sector to try to move the needle on what is a really challenging conversation, in part because childcare itself is a broken market. It's a dysfunctional market for the reasons all of you in this room probably already know. Your business can't provide the service for any less than they're providing it for, and your customer can't afford to pay for it. And it's not a discretionary item for them, and so they need to be able to meet in the middle somewhere. And so it really is a challenging economic conversation to have, which is one of those moments in time when a public and private sector partnership is so essential, because you really can't rely on families to solve it alone. You can't rely on childcare businesses to solve it alone. You can't rely on employers to solve it alone, nor can you rely on the government to solve it alone. It is one of those opportunities for all of us to kind of put our shoulder to it and see what we can do to make a difference. So I am in the perennial challenge of, do my reading glasses help me here or here? So if I'm looking around a little bit, please don't be distracted. I think this is going to work out just fine. So I'm going to, I tried to pull as much Minot specific data as I could. Again, I know your community has been talking and thinking about this for a long time. Hopefully I'll add a couple of new tidbits for you this morning. And then as the title of the talk said, I'm going to try to provide some resources as well, so some updates and some resources for you. And I hope also this is a conversation. I'm perfectly happy to take questions as we go, or at the end, it's totally up to you. So if something is on your mind as we're going through this and you have a question, I don't mind if you just shout it out. So please feel free to do that. This is something that you may be very well aware of. I just put up some labor force participation numbers for you, 2010 all the way to 2022. The gray line is North Dakota's overall labor force participation rate. We remain one of the highest in the country. I don't know, Pat or Katie might keep me honest here, but we're either second, we're usually like first or second, third, like we're already at the top nationwide of labor force participation. We're always pushing ourselves farther, as Katie said, helping more people seek work, look for work, because if they look for it here, they'll find it. But this also, then the red line and the blue line tell you a little bit about households with children. And so what you'll see are the labor force participation rates for households with kids is even higher than the overall for households without. So people with kids are working. This shows you the percentage of kids under age 5 with all available parents in the workforce is over 73%, and school agers, so 6 to 12, is actually almost 84%. That happens for a number of reasons, and one of them is, of course, those family formation years are expensive years. They're early in your career. Your household has a number of expenses that they're trying to juggle, and so workforce participation is high. Not just because people are seeking fulfillment through work and purpose through work, but they need the resource that comes with work, which is income, in order to raise their family and to have the good life, as Katie said. So we really do see childcare as a necessary conversation for employers, for families, for communities. And I think about, why is Health and Human Services talking about workforce to a Chamber EDC group? Because workforce is workers, and workers are people, and people have lives. And lives can be complicated. And that includes caregiving responsibilities, whether it's for your young children or your older parents, could be health issues, could be substance, whatever it is. You as employers know you have a front row seat to people's complexity. When your life is complex, your ability to remain fully engaged as an employee can be compromised. So we think of ourselves at HHS, we're kind of in the business of people, helping people find stability and a path forward, and childcare is one of those ways that we do it. So these are the pillars that are really driving our work as a state around childcare. It is an all of the above approach. So affordability, availability, and quality, we have to be thinking about all of them at the same time. It's not enough if we were to just tackle affordability, just tackle availability or quality. And I think all states have learned that the hard way. Like, you could have great efforts that really lean in on one of those things, but if you don't address all of them, and you look at the data, you see you're not actually making progress. So this is another one of those opportunities for us to, okay, we got to do it. We got to look at affordability, availability, and quality at the same time. And so that's what we have had the opportunity to do, especially over these last couple of years with the passage of House Bill 1540 in the last session. Representative O'Brien was one of the champions of that, as well as obviously Senator Burkhart, Representative Schreiber-Beck, others in the room. We had legislative champions as well as local leaders, business leaders from around the state saying, we need to do something, we need to do something different. And so these just are, as a reference for you, we really did try to focus in. While I say we have to do it all at once, we also have to do it in a targeted way where we hope to maximize the impact. And so targeting investments age 0 to 3, embracing an all of the above approach. This is not just about one type of childcare. It doesn't matter if it's a home-based childcare, a center-based childcare, in a church, in a school, doesn't matter. Quality can happen everywhere, and we need it all. And in North Dakota, we really do embrace that philosophy, perhaps even more than most states. If you look at kind of our provider type mix, we have a ton of home-based providers in our state, licensed home-based providers doing quality care, more than many other states do. So we really do believe that it can happen anywhere, it needs to happen anywhere, but we also know what quality looks like, and we want to help any childcare business get there. And then lastly, really this driving notion that helping working parents be able to provide for their families and find the good life will return impacts for all of us, and it's kind of multi-generational and up and down the line. So I put this on the screen for you, and I don't know, Breck or Kelly, if you're sharing PowerPoints after this, but if you want to, I'm happy to provide it. And so again, you can have this as reference. I won't go through all of it today, but as you look around this, this SWOT summary of what is the state of childcare in North Dakota, you will see that there are some really good things that have been happening over these last couple of years in particular. And there are a number of opportunities that we have to keep our eye on. And I would say, if we are forecasting to what does this next conversation look like in the next legislative session, I have no doubt that we'll be tackling some of those threats and opportunities that you see on the bottom half of this chart, along with policymakers and local leaders like yourselves who want to think about what is the next thing that we have to do. I'll have a couple slides in a bit with some data on one of the items in the threat, which is local labor market realities and childcare workforce. When childcares can't hire workers, and again, childcares are businesses in your community. They are small businesses in your community, some large, but they're small businesses. They compete in your local labor market just like everybody else. If they can't compete effectively, if they can't hire, they can't have rooms open. So it essentially constrains supply of childcare in your community. Whenever a childcare can't hire, your childcare capacity goes down as a community. And that is just a reality of this sector. So when we think about how do you help childcare businesses compete in the local labor market with the wage scale that they are able to pay, you'll quickly see what those challenges are. And a couple of things that are starting to make a difference, but I would be the first to say that there's more work to do there, certainly. And again, in the interest of time, I won't spend a lot of time on this, but I think it's important for us to be clear on what does progress actually look like. And in addition to more people being able to choose work, which is kind of our overarching goal, we know that there are a number of things that we have to watch as an agency, as people who do this work, to make sure that we are making progress. And again, as Katie said, with the work of the Workforce Development Council, that resources are being invested appropriately. So these are some of the things we look at, and I'll spend more time talking about why. So I just pulled out a couple of them to show you and have some Minot data to share as well. So one of those key concepts is that idea of affordability. So the example, utilization of childcare assistance would be one of the things that we look at as a state, as a proxy measure for affordability. The principle is working families are able to limit their childcare cost to 7% of their household income. So you'll see kind of the things that we look at to try to make that happen. I wanted just to put some dollars and cents to that because it's pretty abstract when you just think of Like even if you think of 7% of your own income, you got to do some math, and does it really translate to a thing? So this is a pretty standard household budget. There are 1,000 versions of this. They all look pretty much the same. So any household, doesn't matter what your income, this is kind of your basics. This is what you're spending your money on. About a third of your money probably goes towards housing. If it's more than that, it's considered a burden. About 10 to 20% on insurance, 10 to 15% on food. So you can kind of look around. If you apply those percentages to your own reality, the closer you are to middle income or above, chances are you aren't having to max out those caps. You're actually able to achieve what you need to in your basic needs and have more left over for the personal, the savings, the retirement, some of those other things. So again, it looks a little different based on what your old household income situation is. But if you are a modest income household, your goal is to try to keep it somewhere in this neighborhood for you to be able to make ends meet. When you hear us talk about making ends meet, this is making ends meet. This is what it takes. But what you notice is missing from that chart is childcare. So none of those financial planning charts that you see online ever contemplate childcare. So if you are a family that has young children, now you have another slice to that pie. You didn't lose any other slices. Well, you usually lose savings, you lose recreation, you lose retirement. But you have to add childcare. And the reality is most households are spending 15 to 40% of their gross income on childcare. If they have one, let alone 2 kids, 3 is another matter entirely. So families with young kids have a whole nother slice that they're trying to navigate. When we have a policy goal of 7% of your gross household income on childcare, I want to just show you what that means and why we think so much about helping connect working families to resources to help them pay for the cost of childcare. So this is just from some of Pat's data. I love the job service data. It is awesome. This is from the employment and wage survey that's done. I just categorized by average wage, a number of just occupations probably familiar to you in term, and you'll just see that I'm listing at the top here what was the average reported wage in North Dakota for that period of time, which was 2022. And you can kind of look across there and see. And one of the things that always jumps out to me, the 3/4, and the numbers on the bottom are the number of jobs actually showing people employed in those occupations. So about 73% of jobs have an average wage of $30 an hour or less. So good income, but modest income. And then you convert that to childcare. So I just did some simple math, and here's the actual cost of childcare. I should have had that first, sorry. So if you look across the bottom here, you see infants are on the left chart, and toddlers, I think, are on the right chart. Is that how I did this one? Yep. And then 2017 is your first grouping, 2021, and 2024, so kind of over a 7-year period. The bottom line is you see childcare costs increase by about 40% over the last 7 years. It exceeds inflation by a little bit, but overall you're seeing childcare costs go up at about 40%. And then if you look at the colored bars on there, so the blue bar are childcare centers, the orange are family childcares, the gray are what we call group childcares, and then the yellow are what we call group childcares in a facility. So you can see there are differentials depending on the type of provider, but again, roughly overall, you'll see kind of about a 40% increase across the board. So then take those averages. Here I have from 2021. So in 2021, and this is when we were looking at this in the last legislative session, I took the average cost of childcare at that time and said, okay, let's say you have a 9-month-old and you're in the average cost of a center, childcare center for an infant. You're going to pay $838 a month. For that to be 7% of your income, your household income needs to be $143,600 a year. That translates roughly into a combined hourly wage for your household of $69 an hour. So it could be 2 people with a $35 an hour job, could be one with a $50 an hour job, and another person with a $19 an hour job. Whatever the combination, there's a million combinations. Bottom line, for that one infant to be 7% of your household income, you need to be earning $69 an hour. If you have a toddler, you'll see you can kind of follow the math across, and then let's say you have 2 kids. So if you have 2 kids, your average, and again, this is if you can find a center that's charging you the average, not over the average, but the average, your monthly cost of childcare is $1,500. You're going to need a gross annual income of $268,000 for that to be 7% of your income. So again, you can quickly see the impact that has on your employees with young children who are trying to add that slice to their pie. It's just math. It's just their household math. And again, when you put yourself in the childcare business side, they are not carrying huge profit margins by doing this either. Caring for infants and toddlers is the most expensive work that they do. They can almost turn a profit. caring for preschoolers and school agers, but not at infant and toddler. And so it really is one of the reasons that we focused our efforts as a state on that 0 to 3. It is a really important thing for us to solve together, and no one can solve it alone. So skipping ahead, here I just pulled Minot rates. This is from the resource and referral, so this is self-reported by childcare businesses. They have the opportunity to tell us enrollment, vacancy, what are they charging, all kinds of things. This is on our website, on the R&R website. So these are the Minot rates. Again, you'll see infant, toddler, preschool, school age are the colors on this chart, and then the type of childcare provider is in the groupings, and then you'll see for the state. So again, I just wanted to give you as a point of reference, Minot's rates are a little bit lower than the average statewide, but not significantly. Minot's right in the market of where childcare costs are statewide. So now just do that same little arithmetic exercise with those numbers, with 2024 numbers. And you'll see now the average cost of care in a center for an infant is now $1,082. And this is just a change from 3 years ago, as reported by childcare providers. So these aren't estimated numbers, they're actual numbers in North Dakota. For that to be 7% of your household income, you need to have a gross income of $185,000. And that translates into an hourly wage of $89. So let's say that we as a state say 7% would be nice and all, but obviously we're not going to hit 7%. Let's say 15%. Our target as a state is if you have an infant, you should plan to spend 15% of your gross income on childcare. Let's say that's our goal. So I put that on here too, to just say, what if 7% just feels so unattainable we can't have the conversation? So at 15%, you still need a gross household income of $86,000 for that to be 15% of your household income, which is a combined wage of $41 an hour. So I'm going to go back to the occupation chart here for just a second. So when you start to apply that arithmetic to the reality of what jobs pay, and every job on this chart is a job our communities need. They are good jobs. They are jobs that need to be filled. It is meaningful and purposeful work, but not every job pays a high wage. So if that is your chosen occupation, you are doing work in one of those jobs and you have young children, you now have some math to do as a household. Can you afford to keep doing that job and make sure your child is in a quality childcare setting? So when we talk about the reason that we are thinking about affordability of childcare, that is why. So this is just, I included as a point of reference, but you start to look family size, how much are you earning, your hourly wage, and you start to see where childcare assistance fits in. So here's a map of childcare assistance utilization. I just did over a 12-month period. So this would be the unduplicated number of households. In fact, no, this one's kids. Number of kids per county who are utilizing childcare assistance. You can find your neighborhood there, see Ward County and others. Around 5,000 kids statewide every month are benefiting from some help coming to their family to pay for the cost of childcare. Here I try to hold population constant. So if you assume you look at the number of kids in a county, and then you look at the total number of people using childcare, is a county using more or less than you would expect based on the population? Because obviously when you're comparing Renville County and Grand Forks County, there's a different base to start with. So this just holds that constant. If it's a 1, the county is seeing about as much utilization as you would expect based on the number of kids who are in that county. So you'll see here, Ward is actually, I didn't make this up, Ward is literally right in the middle. You are at an index of 1, meaning based on the number of kids in your county, you're seeing approximately the utilization rate that you would expect to see. Now again, all of that is relative because we're holding this as relative to what else is happening in the state. Do we have the appropriate amount of utilization already? No, but it's a way for you to hold population constant. Here I just added one more factor. We also looked at income. So again, some counties have like for example, Rowlett County, they have a lower average household income than many other counties. They're one of North Dakota's persistent poverty counties. So again, if you look at who's likely eligible for child care assistance, because it's a means-tested program. It's not a poverty level program. If you go back to, oops, I'm pointing the wrong way. If you go back to this chart, child care assistance is available up to 85% of state median. So if you look at that column of incomes, you'll see that this matters for a lot of working families. A lot of working families are eligible for child care assistance who maybe are not aware of it. And it's one of the things that we've really tried to take seriously is how do we help people know, hey, like if you have young kids, you might be able to get some help for the period of time when this budget impact is highest, and that will help you stay engaged in work. So we recognize that it's not always easy for people to see themselves in, oh, see, I did it. I'm going backwards. I told you I needed a remote because I go back and forth a lot, so thank you for that. So again, this just adjusts for income. So you can see, again, and ward is still right about where you'd expect. So that is better than some parts of the state where you'll see their ability to use childcare assistance is pretty constrained right now for a number of reasons. This is something else that, again, we keep an eye on. On the top left, you'll see number of new applications for childcare assistance every month. And then on the bottom right, you'll see the red line are, of those applications, the number that are denied versus approved. And you'll see where those two lines cross in around March or April of this year. That was one of the things that we had been working on after the legislative session to really try to make sure that we weren't making it harder than it needed to be for working families to apply. And so one of the, sounds like just like an administrative change, but instead of only having 10 days to submit your documentation, now you have 30. That's when those lines crossed. Families just weren't able to quite just get the stuff uploaded in time. They need to provide a few things to us, and if they miss that deadline, we need to close the application and say, I'm sorry, you're denied because you didn't return the information that's required, and then they have to start over. Not something anybody wants to do, so we made a change, so they have a longer amount of time to get us what they need, and the lines crossed. We're approving more than we're denying. That's progress. So again, it wasn't something that cost money. It was an administrative change that we're trying to, as we talk to families and we're asking them, tell us what is hard, what is tripping you up, what is hard about this. We're trying to find ways to streamline wherever we can. In addition to the Child Care Assistance Program, which is one of the kind of core elements of House Bill 1540, there was also a new opportunity which we call the Working Parent Child Care Relief Program. It's a public-private partnership. You may have heard of it. Essentially, if an employer says, I want to offer a child care benefit to my staff, we are saying the state will match it. So if an employer wants to offer $300 a month to their employees that have kids younger than 3, the state will provide a matching $300 a month to those same employees. So now that employee has $600 in their pocket available to help offset the cost of childcare. The idea is it was a kind of a third, a third, and a third. Now we know where it's not quite hitting that anymore with averages, but the employer puts in $300, the state puts in $300, and the family covers the difference. And it was a way to try to open the door to childcare assistance beyond the 85% of median in this program goes to 150%. So again, if you go back to that income chart, a much wider group of families who would potentially be able to get some help. What we know is even though 150% of the state median sounds like a big number, just percentage-wise, until you hit that income mark, and now I would say it's probably closer to 200%, childcare for multiple kids under age 5 is still not affordable to you. It really is that level of impact on household budgets, and it means they have less to spend on housing, they have less to spend on food, they have less to spend on their vehicles and all of those other things. So another measure we look at. Stability in the childcare sector means we're aligning supply and demand. Are there spaces available? So this just talks about we want the increase in licensed spaces to be greater than the decrease in licensed spaces. All of us know, many of you have probably heard it, whenever a childcare closes, there is a lot of angst, rightfully so. It is a huge impact for those families. What we're trying to look at a macro level is to make sure that there are more spots opening than closing. Childcares are small businesses. We know childcare, we know small businesses of all kinds. There is some churn. There is some opening and closing. People retire, whatever the reason might be. Our goal is to make sure that the net is going up. And so far in North Dakota, and even during the pandemic, our net has been going up. So we are one of the few states that has seen a consistent rise in childcare capacity overall. This is just a snapshot by license type. So you'll see on the left, and this is Minot specific, so we looked at the number of childcare providers, licensed providers. It's just under 198 licensed providers in Minot by the type. The right side shows you the capacity. Same group, just where does that capacity come from? So this is true no matter where you are in the state. You'll have a smaller number of childcare centers who account for a larger portion of your capacity. Makes sense because they have higher numbers of kids that they serve. So again, when we say all of the above matter, every single childcare business matters, but we have to acknowledge kind of where that capacity comes from and what it looks like when there are openings and closings. So this is the traditional way that we've been trying to show capacity. We'll look by county, we'll say here are the number of providers or here are the number of licensed spots available. So right now, as of the end of August, 1,198 licensed providers in the state. They are approved to provide care for just under 40,000 kids. You'll see again what that looks like by county. What we're starting to try to do more of now is to be more precise in showing you that. So rather than thinking about a county-only border, trying to give you a sense of distribution of where those childcare businesses are located. Because again, when you think about it, where a childcare business, I mean, a county boundary is fine, but people's lives don't end at a county boundary. So especially when you're in a place like Minot, you are a commuting hub. You have people coming into work, going out for work, and so sometimes where that childcare is as important to be proximity to where you work as it is to where you live. It could be proximity to where the older kids go to school is the important thing for you. So when that family is making a decision about, do they feel like they can access the childcare they need when and where they need it? It isn't just about, say, proximity to their home address. It is what are the needs for their life? And so we're going to start to try to show just a little bit with more precision where we have childcare businesses located. This is Ward County. Again, I'm sorry, our base map doesn't have a county layer, but you all know where the Ward County boundary is, so you can just draw it in your mind like it's a fun geography experiment for you. So this gives you Ward County plus a little bit more. But then I also wanted to give sort of a commute range. So this roughly is, so if you go back to the Minot picture, this is roughly 6 miles north to south, 10 miles east to west. That's about the size that you're looking at here. Obviously, there's Ward County. This one gives you roughly, 60, 70 miles to Rugby, about the same over to Stanley. So you're probably looking at about 150 miles east to west and close to 100 miles north to south. So if you think about, again, as employers, you know your commute patterns, your commuting region, and what are the childcare decisions that your families, your employees are making. And I think we don't have a perfect way yet to start to show this. We hope to partner with our friends at Job Service who do the labor market information work, as well as chambers around the state to figure out what matters to you, what do you want to see, what are your commute patterns like, so you as employers have a sense of when do we feel like we're making progress. Okay, I'm doing all right. This is another picture of capacity. Sometimes you hear people talk about a childcare desert. Essentially, desert is a concept used around the country. It's shorthand for severe shortage. So when you hear somebody talk about a childcare desert, it means it's a place that has a severe shortage. And that is typically defined as one childcare space for every 3 kids younger than age 5. So it's like a 1-to-3 ratio. If you're less than that, it's a severe shortage. So these are just some of the, the variables that get you up to the desert calculation, which right now, if you were to use that definition, 16 of North Dakota's 53 counties are classified as a childcare desert. And you'll see what that looks like. Now, the conversation that you're probably having it in your head right now is, well, why is Ward not a childcare desert? Because we have a big childcare problem. And so, one of the things I wanted to show as well is the severity of underserved. That desert threshold is just a threshold. It's a proxy measure. So here you can look at that. I converted the ratio to a percentage. So here you'll see Ward County, for example, is just above that threshold of a desert, a percentage point above. Does that really make a difference between whether the county is shaded or not? It shouldn't. But anytime you have a line, you always have to think about what's happening just above and just below that line. So I think one of the policy questions, and we shared this with a group of legislators just last week at the Human Services Committee interim meeting when we were talking about childcare. These are some of the policy conversations that I think not only as a state, but in your community that we need to have. So what is adequate? Because if you look at North Dakota overall, North Dakota is not a childcare desert. Overall, which again, a macro number doesn't matter for childcare. Childcare is local. Childcare is family specific, employer specific. So, but at a macro level, North Dakota has a surplus of 9,189 spots, according to a childcare desert threshold. Well, we know that doesn't tell us the story on the ground, which Katie queued up so well earlier, which is if families can't find a spot, they can't find a spot. There's really no ability to navigate that without access. So what does access look like? So I listed a few questions on the right side, again, for all of us to think about as we go into our next phase of conversation about how do we want to move the needle in North Dakota. The relevance of place. So again, you have to think about your commute patterns, where families live, where they're working, the intersection of cost and quality with access. Even if there is a space available, if you can't afford it, or the quality isn't such that you would have your child spend time there, doesn't matter if it's available or not. It's not going to feel available to you. So there is an intersection of those 3 elements in every decision. 3-to-1 is severe. Well, what's adequate? Is our measure as a state maybe 2 to 1 and not 3 to 1? Is that what we want to think about as at least our baseline threshold of we know we're making progress? Actual capacity versus potential, not something we've talked about yet. I've been giving you licensed capacity numbers. It is essentially the maximum that a childcare business is allowed to, a maximum number of kids a childcare business can provide care for, based on their space, based on state licensing rules. We give them their max. So they never have to come back to us if they want to, like, we just give them the max. And then they tell us, what's your desired capacity? So as a business, how many kids do you intend to serve? Let's say you're licensed for 100. Maybe they never intend to serve 100 kids. They intend to serve 80. So their desired capacity is 80. They may also have a lower desired capacity because they can't hire staff. So they may have rooms that are sitting idle because they can't staff them, back to that labor force question. So we know there is a gap between licensed capacity and real life capacity. And we're trying to figure out how to get better data to give you as community leaders more information on really what our targets are. Just looking at the data that we did have available for Minot, I think that the haircut is about like 25 to 28%. So if you say that Minot has, 1,000 spots, take 28% off of that, and that's probably the actual spots based on what childcare providers themselves are telling us. So we are definitely mindful of the fact that when we look only at licensed capacity, we are often overstating the availability of care. What really matters is does a childcare business have a room open? Do they have a spot open for the age child that you're looking for in the place that you need it? So there are a lot of factors that have to come together for you as employers to have employees be able to say, yeah, I can do it. I can find childcare. So we're trying to find ways to look at it. So I did a map that said, well, what if we as a state say 2 to 1 is our ratio, not 3 to 1? We don't consider 3 to 1 even like a viable measure. So what if ours was 2 to 1? This is what the map would look like. So again, it does show you that just that simple decision about what are we going for changes kind of our conversation about where we are and what we need to do about it. This is, I think, the last of the big measures I just thought I would share with you this morning. Another measure of stability, we've talked about it a couple times, reduced worker vacancy and turnover in childcares. Again, our goal statement, care capacity in licensed childcares is not constrained by workforce shortages. That would be our goal. Meaning if you are licensed for 100 and you as a business want to serve 100, you can serve 100 because you can find staff to do it. That's progress. That might even be success. Maybe we would call that success. So we know that there are a number of things that have to happen for that to be possible. I wanted again to just put some real dollars and cents to it. So again, this is from Job Service data from their 2022 employment and wage survey. And what I did is I pulled a number of like paraprofessional human serving occupations. So you can compare every occupation you want. But if you think about, I'm a person, I maybe don't have a college degree, so I'm going to rely on on-the-job training. I want to work with people in kind of a caregiving role. These are some common jobs that you may look at when you yourself are looking for work. Nursing assistant, there you'll see the median wage, like that's sort of a CNA, I think would be the equivalent, about $18 an hour. Teacher's assistant in a school, teacher's aide price $17.17, home health aide, so a qualified service provider, DSP, someone working with someone with disabilities, roughly 17 is your median. And then you see childcare workers, and their median is $12.86. And that is when we talked earlier about one of the threats to our ability to make progress. Childcare businesses' ability to compete in their local labor market is just constrained by arithmetic. That is the market that they are needing to compete in, and so people are choosing to work in a childcare at quite a discount for the wage that they will be paid to do that. So I put on the right side, we talked about it a minute ago, if our license capacity was 38,451 last year, providers told us desired capacity is 30,000. We actually don't know what the actual capacity is. We don't know how many rooms are sitting idle just because they can't staff them. It's something that we'll try to get a better handle on, but we know there's a difference between licensed and actual capacity. Again, this is just looking at some of those same occupations, average wage in North Dakota, and just a little bit broader group, including some retail, some hospitality, just some of those entry-level, modest earning occupations, and childcare is at nearly the bottom. And that is, again, just the labor market reality that they are in. And when you go back to those charts of, what is a childcare business, what is their revenue? It's what they charge families for the service. And to charge more prices even more families out. And a lot of childcare providers just can't bring themselves to do it. They just can't bring themselves to charge families even more, but they know that the trade-off is they can't pay their staff. And when they can't pay their staff, they know that sometimes their staff has to leave, and then rooms sit idle. And so you sort of see the cycle. So that's what we're trying to figure out how to interrupt in a way that leaves that control with the childcare business. We're not trying to mandate things or kind of get in the way in a way that is not sustainable or appropriate, but we do recognize no one can solve this alone. It really is a challenge, an arithmetic challenge. Again, just another way to look at that. I just wanted to give you Minot region versus statewide because I wanted to make sure that there wasn't a huge differential in wages in this region, for example, compared to statewide. And overall, there's not. You'll see a little bit of variation in some of those. The percentage or the number in parentheses are the number of workers reporting in that particular occupation in the survey, just to give you a sense of scale. But overall, childcare workers roughly a little bit higher average wage, median wage here in Minot than statewide, but pretty close. This is the newest number that we could get from the 2023, and that median is at 1426. So this is one of the things that I personally am really excited about. It was possible because House Bill 1540 passed last session. There was a new opportunity that the federal child care assistance program, which has been around for 20, 30 years, it was kind of the base of child care assistance. And we had maxed it out. It's a capped program by state. So our state put state money next to federal money. That's why we're able to do more, essentially. But child care assistance said, if you want to have a preference for people who work in childcare to automatically be eligible for childcare assistance, states, you can do that. We said, sign us up. We want to do that. So we started right after session, putting in place what we needed to, kind of system-wise, to make that happen. We were able to roll it out June 1st. We knew there would be a boost in people using childcare assistance, but we knew we had state dollars because of House Bill 1540, and we knew that this was a kind of a virtuous cycle, so we said, let's do it. So June 1st, we rolled that out, and this was just a snapshot as of the end of, I suppose it was maybe September 10th when we pulled this. These are the number of childcare workers statewide who were benefiting from that. So far, 255 childcare providers have staff, 520 workers, over 1,000 kids. What we're hearing anecdotally from childcare businesses is that this could be a game changer. And so we were talking with one Western North Dakota provider. She had just put out an ad for a job, it was in June, and where she'd usually get maybe one or two, she got 30 applications, and every one of them had young kids. Usually the average was 2. And what her applicants told her is, I can now actually take home my paycheck because I don't have to worry about what childcare costs. And that provider was one who was trying to subsidize the cost of care for their employees. It was a benefit they offered. They would say, please come work for me. We'll give you a reduced rate. Even a reduced rate when your average wage is $14.50 an hour means you're not taking home much of your paycheck. But now they're able to work. Their kids are in a quality setting that they trust. There is no cost to their family, no matter what their household income, and that's the flexibility. So what the North Dakota program says is as long as you work in a licensed childcare for 25 hours or more a week, it doesn't matter what your household income is, childcare assistance program will pay up to the state max rate. So if you think about that cost of care for an infant and a toddler in an average price center, it's over $2,000 a month that family now no longer has to find money for in the slice of their budget. It almost doubles the wage when you're thinking about the wage that they get paid. So we are hopeful that we will continue to see this not only help childcare businesses retain their current staff, but hire the staff that they need to open those rooms and to compete in the labor market without necessarily pushing on the wage. And because again, that's each business has to make that decision of what is affordable for them and their business. But this benefit, we think, will help close the gap. We're going to do our best to capture data to track that, but it's only been a couple months, and we're seeing, this is 21% of all the providers in the state already have a worker who is benefiting from this program in just a couple months. That's pretty good. In summary, I listed all of the different elements from House Bill 1540. We've talked about many of them. They are all kind of in progress and being implemented. There were a number focused on childcare providers, so most of those grant opportunities remain open. The only one that we have run out of dollars for a couple times already are the facility grants. So we're working through our wait list on that, and that probably is all the resource we'll have this time around. This is one that I know I read when I looked at the summary of some of Minot's work around childcare. You talked a lot about the sustainability and ability for childcare businesses to thrive. This was also something we heard in the last legislative session. And so it's called the Shared Services Alliance. There's some links at the end if you want, but childcare businesses have access to, like if they want a childcare management software to help them with their billing, like family participation, this will underwrite the cost of that, so it makes it more affordable for smaller providers. A lot of the larger providers already use that. Women's Business Center is hosting childcare-specific entrepreneurship and business growth trainings. They have a number of cohorts. In fact, they're just taking applicants for their next cohort, I think this month in October. And then there's curriculum, there's resource. So it's this idea of what are the childcare-specific businesses, supports, and services that will help that business thrive? Because again, childcare is a different business than, running a factory is. It's just different. And so these are business resources targeted specifically to childcare business owners. These are some of the resources for families. We've talked about most of them. And then I will just note, just last week, we finally were able to put up, this is a live dashboard on our website. So if you want to see sort of spending trends and how dollars are being used and what we have left and how we get to the end of the biennium, that's all out there as well. Maybe only our appropriators who care about that, but it is out there and it is current as of the end of the previous month. And so that will just be something you can always keep an eye on now. Just a few links for you at the end. I did bring, because the title of my talk said updates and resources, I did bring you a few postcards. They're pretty easy to carry with you, but I'll just say one thing that I forgot to mention, I don't know why, but we just published an employer toolkit. It's a simple set of resources for employers who maybe are interested, like maybe you have an employee newsletter, like we have some cut and paste stuff you can just use. It's how you participate in working parent childcare relief. Let's say that you're a grocery store owner and you have, a number of your cashiers who might qualify for childcare assistance. It makes it easy for you to say, hey, just in case you didn't know this was a thing, like there's a thing. So it's employer-specific toolkit. There's some of those on the back table. This is something we sent to every childcare provider in the state, a stack of them, for them to share with their families. We know nobody wants to hear from the state. You want to hear from the people closest to you. So trying to equip childcare programs so they can help their own families connect to resources that might benefit to them. And then this is on that childcare workforce benefit, which a lot of our childcare businesses are using as a recruitment tool now, which we're really glad to see. I also noted in your summary report that you did here in Minot, you talked a lot about wanting to have business resources for childcare businesses. So I know you guys probably already have this, but I grabbed a few. Childcare Aware and Vision West put together an updated set of kind of tools and how-tos on how to be a childcare business, both if you want to start one or expand. So I wanted to at least share those with you and make sure they had a home here in Minot in case you hadn't seen them already. But I will just say it's a real pleasure to get to partner with groups like the Minot Chamber EDC, as well as your colleagues around the state, policymakers, families, businesses. Everybody wants to figure this out. It's tricky. It's a tricky one, but I was in a meeting in Rugby not too long ago, and a couple people around the table said, we actually feel like there might be a path forward. Like we know there's a lot of work to do, but there are a lot of things that are moving. And so I'm hoping that we can keep that momentum going and that the data will start to show us that we are closing some of those gaps. So with that, Kelly, I don't know if there's time for questions, I'm more than happy to take them, or I can be here over lunch too, whatever works for you.